Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, in particular, to Ian Lewandowski from Shearcore, who's watching. Now, Ian, are you in Europe, which would explain why you're watching at this time, or are you still in the States? Love to know. But good morning, Ian. Great to see you here. And speaking of America, oh, America, what did you just do? Less about that, the better. I'm going to say good morning to Jim Turner, who is in the house. Mark Whiting is in the house. Ken Hatcher is in the house as well. Good morning to you, one and all. Yes, Sweden was very cold. Good practice for the months ahead, I think. But yeah, very, very cold. Stood out in the freezing cold for about 8 hours filming diggers and thoroughly enjoying every minute of it, which is always good. Dan Cullen's in the house as well. Morning, Dan. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Yeah, fantastic trip. Want to say thank you to Sandra Jansen and the entire Volvo team for taking such great care of us. Really good turnout. Really, really good turnout. Basically, Volvo hosted this event because the World Demolition Summit is taking place later this week. So there's lots and lots of demolition people from around the world, particularly the States. There's a lot of Americans in town. So they Volvo took it upon themselves to host a demolition-themed event. Also had guests. So MB Crusher, Hammer Glass, Genesis, Demarec, and various other people as well. So and my mates at Oil Quicken at Steel Wrist as well. So yeah, it was a really good event. Very, very well done and fantastic new machines. I didn't get back until about midnight last night, so I've not had a chance to do the main bit. Basically, they've got two new high-reach excavators from Volvo, and there's a straight boom derivative of their new machines as well. So I'll be coming back to that in the next day or two. I'll be telling you more about that. But yeah, I'll keep you. There is some Volvo content on the show today. Dan Cullen says, "What was their demo kit like?" Awesome. I'm trying to think of a way to write this because I do intend to write about it. But one of the things that struck me whenever I tend to see high reach versions of existing digging machines, they always look like what they are, like they've been designed as an afterthought. You know, there's the counterweight is a bit too bulky, the boom's a bit out of proportion, and stuff like that. This looked like the reverse. The EC400 and the EC500 both look like they were designed as demolition machines, and then maybe Volvo get around to doing a digging version at some point. They've already done it. But they do look like they've been designed specifically for demolition. I'll be telling you more about all of that. Jim Turner says, I think America has done the right thing for Americans. I bet China are looking a bit sad right now. Not just the Chinese. I do wonder. And, you know, obviously I'm very remote from all things political in the States. I do wonder if trying to elect a woman and a woman of colour at the same time was perhaps a step too far. I wonder. Just leaves me feeling. One of the things that concerns me about this, and this is very much a European's perspective, is I worry that as a result of Trump gaining power, Vladimir Putin will feel empowered and a bit more free to do what he pleases in Ukraine and quite possibly beyond. As I say, very European perspective, but that's one of my concerns. Dan Cullen says the 950 would be a great high reach. Man alive, wouldn't it just? Maybe one day. But yeah, as I say, Volvo did a fantastic event. The people there are absolutely awesome. Martin Donkersloot, who gave me the guided tour, and I will be playing the interview on that at some point, just knows demolition and knows Volvo inside out. Yeah, absolute pleasure to be in his company. And all the others. I saw Paul Argent from RPA Media. I saw Ash from Awesome Earth Movers. He was there as well. Very targeted event, you know, very sort of demolition specific, but really, really good event. So thank you, Volvo, for taking such great care of us. Now, let's get on with the show, shall we? I do have mystery machines. I have a question of the day as well. So let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and we'll get the show on the road. Going to say good morning to Footy, who says, good morning, bro. Good morning to you, my friend. Ken Hatcher says, strange, I thought the opposite with Russia. Listen, it'll play out the way it plays out. But as I say, I just wonder whether their friendship might make Mr. Putin feel a little more free and easy with his invasions and stuff. Jim Turner says, black, white, male, female shouldn't make any odds to any rational person. Yeah. I'm not going to get into the whole rational person bit. I have my own personal feelings on that, and I'll leave you to fill in the gaps. The issue is you're asking quite a lot of people. I think it was asking a lot to elect the first black president in Barack Obama. I think that was a step. I think electing a woman would have been a step, but a black woman. Mate, listen, maybe I'm reading it completely wrong. Maybe I'm completely wrong. And our friend Ian over at Sheercore says, I have the same worry, Mark, but I hope I'm wrong. I think we all hope you're wrong. All I can hope now is that Mr. Trump actually recognizes this time around the gravity of his office. At the end of the day, America remains the most powerful country in the world, and he has the ability to make things in the world much, much, much better. He also has it within his kin to make it a whole lot worse. I hope he goes the right direction. Peter McKenna says, welcome back, pal. Nice to see your friendly face. I don't think my face has been described as friendly for quite some time, but thank you very much indeed for that, Peter. Jim Turner says, yes, Ken, you are spot on. Trump has already laid down the law to Putin when he passed comment on his ornate golden domes. Doesn't seem to have turned him back much, though, does it? Doesn't seem to have turned it back. So we've got the question of the day. Before we go any further, I do want to show you today's mystery machine. So right back after this. Yeah, I'm trying to slide one past you today. The machine you're about to see, not in its usual colours. It's quite a specialised machine anyway, but it's even harder to distinguish because it's not in its natural colours. So here we are. This is the mystery machine that you need to define. There you are. Takashi 2057 just said Trump became president. We know. Can't say all of us are happy about it. Me being one of them. But yeah, there you are. It is what it is. And ultimately, it's not really for me to impose my personal politics on another nation. As I say, I'm concerned about the impact that will have on the whole Ukrainian Russia thing, and that is a big concern. And then what that means for wider Europe. Perhaps my biggest concern is completely personal. The America that has voted Donald Trump into power again, not the America that I remember, that I love, and I do genuinely love America. I spent a lot of time there. And as Jim rightly said earlier, don't care whether people are black, white, gay, straight, male, female. America has always been very, very, very welcoming. I don't get the impression it feels like that today. Look on the bright side. Demolition News is Vernon Kay's loss. Yes, I'm sure Vernon Kay is sat there thinking, where have all my viewers gone? Not. Yes, so there's the mystery machine. Had no guesses on that. Let's have a look. I'll tell you what, I'll show you a little bit more of that. There you are. That's just a little bit more. I'm going to remind you very quickly of our question of the day, because we've already had a couple of answers on it, but just in case you did miss it, here it is again. Yeah, a bit of an obscure one, this one today. Question of the day is this: if you could be a fly on the wall, where would you go? Now, obviously, I'm a red-blooded man. I'd be tempted to hover about in the changing room of a Victoria's Secret show, but I'm not entirely sure that me in fly form would enjoy it quite as much as I would in human form. So, as a journalist, I'd probably use my fly powers to snoop on the industry's self-appointed leaders to see if they do, in fact, discuss anything aside from the location of their next overseas convention. But what about you? If you could be a fly on the wall, snoop on somebody else, what would you do? Where would you go? Who would you listen in on? Going back to the mystery machine, Chris Ford has said it could be a Cat 308. I can see where you're going with that. It's not, but I can see where you're going with that. Keep the guesses coming in. We'll come back to that in just a moment because I do need to show you something from my travels immediately after this. Yeah, Dan Cullen reckons that our mystery machine could be a JCB 131 scrap handler. It is not one of those. Let me take that away. Yes, so I got back late last night. I've not had time. I just didn't have time to edit the film on the EC400, the EC500, nor on the new straight boom machine. But while I was there, I did get to see up close and personal Volvo's active control system. And of all the applications that you could possibly put active control in, I would say that Demolition would be front and center, basically. So this is what active control looks like, and this is what it can do. Yeah, very smart system, that. Very, very smart indeed. I'm going to say, I'm going to dwell on this just a moment. Peter McKenna says, video game freaks porn right there. Yeah, now, interestingly enough, there's a guy who works for Awesome Earth Movers. Really nice young fella called Ash. Ash, I've seen that. I mean, Ash has been working for Awesome Earth Movers now for about 18 months or thereabouts. I see him about the place quite a bit, Mine Expo and Con Expo and places like that. Well, Ash was on this event yesterday, and he got to drive the EC500 high-reach excavator. It's the first time he has ever driven a machine. So he's gone from never driving a machine to a 50-ton class high-reach excavator. And he came off, and he said, that was brilliant. He said, I was surprised at how easy it was. And I said, tell me, Ash, are you a gamer? And he said, yeah. And you could see the light went on in his head. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that did feel a lot. And yes, exactly that. Exactly that. Dan Cullen, I'm going to put this up on the screen, but then I'm going to quickly move on. Now, she could actively control me. I don't think anyone can control you, Dan. I think you're kidding yourself. Let's have a look. Here is the mystery machine. What have we got? We've got Jim Turner saying it could be a JCB 10.0. It's not. Dan Cullen reckons it could be a case 888 handler. It is not. Let me show you a bit more. There you are. That's what you're working with. Peter McKenna says, I've controlled high-abs, truck-mounted cranes and concrete pumps, so it wouldn't take me long to get the hang of that. No, I'm sure it wouldn't. Sure it wouldn't. Well, going back to my conversation with Ash, two things, actually, and I'll do the first bit first, and then I'll come back. When we were in Czech Republic with Bobcat, maybe a year ago, they had this basically a system whereby you put your mobile phone into a holder, which is like a joystick holder, And they gave it to Fred, my son Fred, who is a gamer, and he was driving a skid steer in about 4 seconds flat. And not just driving it, but actually making the thing do its job properly, because it felt so natural. I mean, when he finished, I said, how was that? He said, it just felt, everything was where it should be. So that's one thing. But going back to Bobcat, you will recall we've covered Bobcat quite a bit on the show, both at Con Expo and from the Czech Republic as well. You will know also that we've had one of our guests on the show. It's a guy called VJ Nerva from Bobcat. Had a message today to say he is leaving Bobcat. I realise he's probably going on to more challenging things and everything else. But I have to say, hand on heart, one of the nicest and without question, one of the smartest people I have ever encountered in this industry. Thankfully, Bobcat have some fantastic other people that are that way inclined as well. But I'm going to miss him. He's an absolute star. So, VJ, I know you're probably not watching this. You're probably packing up your bags or whatever about now. But I'm wearing the hat in tribute to you, sir. You've been an absolute pleasure to work with. So good luck with whatever the future holds for you. Jim Turner says, question of the day. The people that are one rung above the CIA in the grand scheme of things, and that's just got your show a few more unofficial viewers. Yes, if everybody could just type CIA into the chat. Watch the or if you know any words in Chinese, please drop those in the chat. We're going to go back to the question of the day because Peter McKenna, almost certainly not aided by Google or ChatGPT, says flies use their antenna to detect vibration. The reported range of this hearing is 100 to 300 hertz. The human voice is roughly 60 to 180 hertz for males and 160 to 300 hertz for females. So technically, yes, flies can hear you. I wonder what they make of this. I'm not aware of any flies actually in here at the moment. It's a bit too cold for them at the moment. But I wonder what a fly would make of this show. What is that pellet going on about? I think they would say in fly language. Back to the mystery machine. I'm going to take that away. Thank you for that, Peter. Another guess, the Hyundai HX85A. It's not JCB 8030. It is not Wacker Neuson 6-tonner. It is not Ken Hatcher, an HW excavator from China. It is not. It's from closer to home than that. Not in the UK, but it's closer to home. So let me show you a smidge more. There you are. As I say, the fact that it's not in its traditional colours probably working in my favour at the moment. But keep the guesses coming in. Dan Cullen is also going for a Kubota U50. Funnily enough, I was originally planning to feature a Kubota on our mystery machine today. Couldn't find the photograph I wanted, so I went with this. So you could well have been right, just not on today's show. Back in just a second with something else. We're going to be talking backhoe loaders. Not once, but twice. See you in a sec.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
And if you're going to talk about backhoe loaders, it seems only right and proper that you should basically start with those what pioneered the machine. Some debate over whether they actually invented it, but they certainly pioneered it. So here is JCB.
I'm Mark Stone. I'm Depot Plant Manager of Maynell Plant Hire.
My name's Paul Moran, AK Jockey. Been plant manager of Maynell Plant Hire for the last 17 years. First started off as a 3CX operator 36 years ago on this company.
On this site, there's a range of work going on, from road formations all the way through to drainage, and the backhoe is ideal for all of those jobs. It can be pushing out stone with the front loader, and then it can be used using the excavator end, digging trenches for the gullies back through and shoring sides up. Before a telehandler arrives on site, the forks on the front end come into their own, so they can be used for unloading lorries. Again, the versatility of the machine, they can be used on standalone.
You don't wear a set of tyres out like you do rubber tracks on a 360. We have three 3CXs, one's pushing stone out, one's building the side of the road up with clay, another one could be digging gullies. It can do all the services in the roads, right through to footings, building the house, doing the gardens. When you're building the roads and you're pushing 20 tonne of stone out, it's so versatile with grading, dragging back with your 4-in-1. It can complete the task from day one to the end of the job. My eyes, you can't do without a 3CX.
Going to say good morning to, please forgive me for this. Somebody over on Instagram has just given us a round of applause. And they are either called Sibo bushings or they're called Sibo bushings. Whatever way you pronounce it, thank you for the round of applause. Going back to backhoe loaders, which we'll be going back to in just a second. Brilliant mount, says Jim Turner, if you can get the jockeys. Interesting that guy's name was Jockey. Well, his nickname anyway. Mystery Machine looks like that currently. Let me take that away. Jim Turner reckons it could be a 1-ton Wacker Neuson. It is not. Dan Cullen reckons it could be the Takuchi TB280FR. It is not one of those either. Peter McKenna's going with the Volvo ECR40. Do you really think I'd come back from Volvo and just present you with a Volvo? That would make life way too easy. Dan Cullen going for the New Holland E70. It is none of those things. Let me show you a bit more. There you are. Does that help in any way, shape or form? Probably not. Now, I've promised you that we're going to have more backhoe action, and we are, immediately after a smidgen of this. I've already mentioned Bobcat. I'm going to mention them again now. Bobcat, backhoe loaders. Take a look.
Carry and load up front, dig in the back. Move the job forward from any direction with the Bobcat B760 backhoe loader. It's an outstanding backhoe loader designed with durability, easy operation, simple maintenance, and incredible performance in mind. An efficient digging, trenching, and loading workhorse, the B760 delivers 96 horsepower and nearly 180 degrees of backhoe swing for the job, without sacrificing essential maneuverability and job site accessibility. Enhance your versatility even further with a variety of Bobcat buckets and attachments. The B760 comes standard with an extendable arm, increasing your maximum digging depth from 15.2 feet to 18.4 feet on command. Compared to other backhoe loaders of the same size, the B760 provides 6 to 8 inches of additional depth. Drive down the road at an impressive speed of 22.6 miles per hour and quickly move across large job sites, or take a trip to the next one with less need for trailering. To keep you out of the shop and on the job site, the engine requires no diesel particulate filter regeneration, while heavy-duty work group construction has smart reinforcement. Load up the productivity. Dig into a challenge. Seize more opportunity from the seat of the Bobcat B760. Ask your local dealer for details.
Very smart indeed. Like the white. Going back to the Mystery Machine, we've got a couple of guesses here from Dan Cullen. The SD-JK36. I don't even know what that is. He's then gone for an SD-JK JKW355. I don't know what that is, but it's not one of those. I can show you a bit more. There you are. A bit more cab for you to look at. I think you've probably figured out by now, this is a camouflage version. I didn't add the camouflage. That's just how it came. I'm sure this is for some sort of military application. But yeah, nobody's got even close yet. We haven't got the right manufacturer or the right model either. So keep the guesses coming in. We're going to be back in just a moment with the fine folks at Caterpillar.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Yeah, I've just had a very quick look. Let's have a put this up on the screen. I can show you a smidge more because we are getting very, very close to the end now. The show or the video I'm about to play you is going to be the last one of the day. So I would like to get this resolved, or otherwise I shall claim the points. What do we got here? Chris Ward reckons it could be a Sunwater 80. It is not. Dan Cullen reckons it could be a Wacker Neuson ET35. Nope, none of those things. Yeah, you don't even have the right country of origin yet. That's where we are right now. So, yes, I promised you some Caterpillar, but not new Caterpillar. As good as new Caterpillar.
We got a really cool project. We're doing a certified powertrain and hydraulic rebuild on a 336 excavator. The reasoning to choose to rebuild this 336, it was kind of brought to our attention that it would be something that NC would really like to do, and it's something that has saved us some money. Everybody in the company really liked these 336s that we have, but they were at the life point where they were starting to become unreliable.
Talking to BDZ about certified rebuilds, and they were interested in hearing more about that. So we did a presentation for them.
Colin, Brandon, and I would be sitting there running different scenarios.
And we look at the total cost of ownership and see if it's of value to the customer.
So it made a lot of sense to do rebuilds on these. The savings that they would get off of doing these 3 machines would allow them to purchase and grow their fleet by 1 more machine. What goes into a powertrain and hydraulic rebuild is really everything from the engine all the way back down to the axle.
The 336 is very, very straightforward. So we removed the cab, we removed the engine, removed the control valve, the swing drive, final drives.
We bought Caterpillar remanufactured engine, hydraulic pump, all motors.
You really gave that whole machine a complete uplift.
Simply put, rebuilds are an economical way to get your machine back to like new condition and lower your operating cost.
I would say people would be surprised that we're rebuilding excavators.
Because always the mantra was, it's not economical to rebuild an excavator. I think otherwise. Caterpillar equipment is built to be rebuilt.
I think that there's a lot of companies out there that don't realize you can fully rebuild a machine cost effectively.
The hydraulic excavator rebuilds with BDZ was a great opportunity. It was a natural fit for him to bring it to us and have this machine rebuilt and give him the value he expects out of a rebuilt machine.
We went through rebuilding the first excavator. We're currently going through the second one, and another 6 months we'll plan on doing a third one.
I am totally with Ken Hatcher. That's the way to do it, yeah. Built to be rebuilt. That's the way forward. The Mystery Machine. It's a victory for me today, I can tell you. What do we got? Chris Ford, I think, said the CX45D from Case. It's not. Dan Cullen reckons the Bobcat E27Z. Peter McKenna on the same Bobcat idea. He's going for the E35. It's not. Bobcat EE8. It's none of those things. Dan Cullen, it's not a Devellon DZ27 either. I can tell you. I can reveal all. It is, in fact, one of those. Italian built. It is a Eurocomac EZ35ZT. That's what that is. Yeah. If you look very, very closely in the bottom part of the camouflage there, you can actually see exactly what that is. Chris Ford belatedly says Komatsu PC 50. No, it's not. So chalk up 3 points to me. So the standings as of today, which is obviously the very beginning of the month, it is Dan Cullen on 3 points and me on 3 points. That's as far as we've got so far. Dan Cullen says, wow, and well done, Mark. Yes. If only it was that easy all the time. Mick says, nice bit of camo. Yeah. In fact, if it wasn't on a background, that would be all but invisible. So, yeah, there we are. Let me take that away. That's about it for the main part of this morning show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue, which the opening might suggest otherwise, but I promise you it's nothing to do with the US elections, nothing to do with Donald Trump. I actually wrote it on the plane last night on the way back from Sweden. I didn't know what the election result was. In fact, the election was far from over at that point. So nothing to do with that, but as I say, the opening might suggest otherwise. So if you can't stick around for that, please do stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'll be back in just a moment with my morning monologue. And let's hope I can read that better than I just read that. Just going to clear up very quickly all things related to our mystery machine. Peter McKenna says, shame we didn't get to see the exhaust. That was the deciding feature. I'll take your word for that. Dan Cullen says, back to work now. We're listening as munching today. Well, turn up the radio. Radio? Turn up the volume because I'm about to begin my morning monologue. There is a famous quotation that reads, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. Since there's some question over who actually said that first, I'm going to borrow it and rewrite it for my own purposes. The only thing necessary for the construction's... Let me do that again. The only thing necessary for construction's drug and alcohol culture to continue is that good men do nothing. At the time of writing, I'm just back from Sweden. When I arrived, Sweden was closed. When my plane touched down at Stockholm's Arlanda airport, there was no one manning passport control. So me and about 200 other people disembarked, went up an escalator, and there we stopped. As a result of this inexplicable delay, and through no fault of my own, I kept my taxi driver waiting for about 40 minutes. So when we finally got to his car, the taxi driver was required to do an in-car breathalyzer test to prove that he hadn't been in the bar. He had, in fact, just been waiting for a tardy Englishman. I'd never seen this system used before, but the driver used it willingly and without fuss. The following morning, I arrived at the Eskilstuna headquarters of Volvo Construction Equipment, where myself and more than 150 other demolition fanboys and girls were told that we could operate all the equipment on display, but only after we had completed a breathalyzer test. Which begs the question, how is it that the Swedes can enact a zero-tolerance policy, but we can't? We're not going to do that bit again. How is it that the Swedes can enact a zero-tolerance policy, but we either can't or won't? And I'll come back to that question in just a second. But first, I think it's important to clear up a few things. First of all, yes, it is very easy for me to propose zero tolerance on drink and drugs. I've never touched a recreational drug in my life, and after about 15 years sober, if I had a drink now, I'd probably be divorced first by my wife and then by my liver. So yes, I do come at this argument from a standpoint of abstinence. Secondly, I believe there should be zero tolerance on sites in general, but on equipment in particular. And some might argue that I'm singling out a particular group of demolition and construction workers. And they're right. It's exactly what I'm doing. Here's the way I see it. If the guy manning the gate or pushing the broom is drunk or hungover, the only person likely to be impacted is the individual themselves. If the site supervisor is smoking weed in his cabin, the only thing likely to be in mortal danger is the nearest stash of biscuits. But if an excavator operator is impaired, he or she is a danger to themselves, to all their fellow workers, and quite possibly to pedestrians as well. So let's now go back to my question of why we can't do what the Swedes do with such apparent ease. The answer, I believe, is not that we can't, it's that we won't. I've seen firsthand from my Swedish taxi driver that the technology to self-test already exists. It would surely be simple enough to back that system with an in-cab camera to make sure that the person blowing is actually the person operating. Hell, even random manual tests would be a step in the right direction. The reason we have thus far resisted these changes and any meaningful discussion around the subject seems to be an inherent fear that if the industry were to open this particular can, there would be worms everywhere. Sites would grind to a halt if we tested for drugs and alcohol is an explanation I've heard countless times. The management won't back a zero-tolerance policy because they're every bit as guilty is another argument I've heard. Both of which proves that the industry knows it has a problem, but is actively choosing not to address it. Which brings me back to my original quote. The only thing necessary for construction's drugs and alcohol culture to continue is that good men do nothing. So with that in mind, I'm going to leave you with another quotation, one that is often attributed to Sir Richard Branson, he of Virgin fame. When asked, what if we train our people and they leave, Branson allegedly and pointedly responded, what if we don't train them and they stay? So why are we so desperately keen to retain staff that are apparently willing to risk their own lives and those of others? Why do we continue to employ people that place their questionable leisure activities above work? Why are we happy to accept that some operators might be a bit slower or a bit more erratic because of what is coursing through their bloodstream? Now, personally, given the choice between an unsafe operator or no operator at all, I'm opting for no operator at all. The stakes are just too high, if you'll pardon the pun, to do otherwise. So surely the time has come for good men to do something. There you are. So yes, just going back to literally got in the taxi. Guy was waiting for me. Signed, Mark Anthony. Followed him, a couple of hundred yards down the way. Jumped into a taxi, and he said, "Sorry, I've been waiting for more than 30 minutes." Little bleep on the dashboard. Okay, you're good to go. There you are. Job done. Now, I'm sure that's an electronic system. I'm sure that cab is allocated purely to him. But if there is any doubt about who is blowing into the bag, we've heard plenty of stories about people getting other people to take AP test for them because that is how determined they are to put themselves and others at risk. Just back it with a camera. The person who's blowing into the bag or into the device is also the person that's on the camera. It's not a hard thing to do. But even if that's a dim and a long way off into the future, what about a manual test? What about random drug testing? What about random alcohol testing? And the fact that we are not even discussing it, and there are exceptions. The Scottish Plant Operators Association up in not surprisingly, Scotland, they're doing a lot of work on this. But when you think about people like, the CPA, Build UK, the NFDC, are not even talking about this. And why aren't they talking about it? Well, take your pick. They don't want to end up with a situation where there are no operators, or there's no site supervisors, there are no middle managers, there's no senior managers. That's one of the issues. But surely the thought should be not how will we operate without operators. Surely the argument should be how are we operating with operators that we know to be under the influence, that are impaired by drugs or alcohol. Good morning to Titans Demo, who have just joined us over on the way there. Peter McKenna says, new trucks have that option, except it's an extra 10k to have it implemented. There was a trucker stopped nearly 3 times over the limit. Yeah, and again, I will liken it. I will liken it to this. If you're in charge of a bicycle or a micro scooter, yes, you could run into somebody and you could do a bit of damage. But by and large, if you're off your tits in one way or another on a bicycle, the person you're most likely to harm is going to be yourself. If you're at the wheel of a car or a truck or behind the levers of an excavator, the amount of damage and injury and possible fatalities that you can inflict grows exponentially. So that should be our starting point. If the guy driving the broom is on weed or something like that, not good, definitely not good, because his decision making and functions will be impaired, and he could well find himself walking in front of a machine. But again, the harm there will be limited purely to that person. Where the issue arises is where you've got somebody driving an excavator, a wheel loader, a dozer, a backhoe loader, a skid steer loader. At that point, you can take out 2, 3, 10, 50 people if you were really determined, or if you completely lost the plot in one way or another. Mick says, forget the name, but there's a breath test on the market. If I remember it right, it's used somewhere. The insurance people insisted on it being in the car. I mentioned this to one of my colleagues in the press, a guy called Jan Hermansson, who runs Professional Demolition International, the magazine based out of Sweden. So not surprisingly, he is a Swede. I arrived, a little bit late because of my issues getting into the country. And I said, yeah, I've never seen this before. Guy got into the car and had to do a breath test. And he said, oh, sweet, zero tolerance. And think about that. We have, in this country, we've adopted this notion of, I'm talking specifically about alcohol right now. We've adopted this notion of units of alcohol. What, for a starting point, does anybody actually know what a unit of alcohol actually looks like? But it's not cut and dried, because a unit of alcohol will impact you differently depending on whether you're male or female, whether you're large or small, whether you've eaten before or not, and so on. So there are all these variables. So there is always that. A pint won't hurt. A pint and a half be all right. 2 pints, yeah, should be fine. I'm a big lad, I've had plenty to eat. That'll be fine. And there's this, rather than operating in the sphere of black and white, we've created a system that perpetuates operating in the grey. Nobody's entirely sure. Nobody's absolutely certain of what you can and what you can't do. Go to Sweden. You're driving a machine or a car. Zero. Simple as that. That's how you make a rule. Think about this from other rules. Let's take driving as an example. You are either wearing your seatbelt or you are not. You can't half wear a seatbelt. I mean, I do realise that operators often sit on the damn things, but you've either engaged your seatbelt or you haven't. It's either black or it's white. Simple as that. With alcohol, you can be half pregnant. Let's have a look. Peter McKenna says, Draga Interlock, 7,500 vehicle breathalyzer of £1,595, excluding VAT. Surely that is worth companies looking into. Can't see why companies can't fit these to machines they acquire. I mean, 1,500 quid, well, 1,600 quid actually. It's not cheap. Not cheap. I'm not being silly here. But how much would it cost if one of your operators turned up high or pissed and backed over a car, backed over another machine, backed over a co-worker, backed over a pedestrian? At that point, 1,600 quid doesn't sound like a bad deal at all, does it? Apparently this Draga Interlock 7,500 measures the alcohol concentration in the breath of the driver and releases the engine only if the test is passed. I think that was the system that my man behind the wheel of the taxi had. I think he literally had to get a zero reading before he could start the car. Dan Cullen says, great monologue, Mark. And yes, men are a lethal weapon when pissed. I mean, Dan, you've seen it up close. You've actually experienced people being under the influence on site. Yeah, they are. I refer to this a lot when you're talking about demolition and construction. One of the great attributes, but also one of the great fears of demolition and construction, is that teamwork, particularly in demolition. I think your safety and your well-being at least partly hinges upon the person working to your left and to your right. That was the wrong way around. To your left and to your right. You need to, when you go to work, be it demolition or construction, you need to be certain that the person working either side of you, behind you or in front of you, has got your back. They do not have your back or their own back if they are impaired by alcohol or drugs. It is as simple as that. It is as simple as that. Mixes. Let's face it, a breath and saliva test takes but a few minutes. Why not have everyone who operates a machine on site made to take them? After all, if they catch one and it saves the firm or the insurance a small fortune in case of accidents. Yeah. I mean, maybe that is the approach. We are years into waiting for the powers that be so-called self-appointed powers that be to actually seize the bull by the horns, and they're not doing it. Maybe this is something for the insurance companies to pioneer. You know, we will give you X off of your insurance premiums every single year if you fit this system, and you know you can prove that your operators are driving clean and sober. That seems like a good deal, doesn't it? And maybe, you know, going back to the £1,600 cost of this interlock system, maybe that's largely offset by reduction in your insurance premiums. Seems like a good deal to me. Peter McKinnon says, thing is, there technically can't be a zero tolerance, as some over-the-counter medicines can make you fail a breath test, hence why the UK has such a high tolerance. But that must be the same everywhere. You know, that's not a UK thing. And listen, you know, we've had this in athletics, for example. You know, there is very thorough, largely thorough testing for drugs and doping in athletics and in sport. And yes, there are the occasional ones that throw up. It's a prescription medicine, but it's tested positive for performance enhancement or testosterone or whatever it might be. There's an investigation. No, you're clear, or no, you're lying. Simple as that. That's all we need. And ultimately, you know, if somebody turns up and they are on a prescription, over-the-counter prescription medicine, that means that when they blow into that machine, they're stopped for long enough for the site supervisor or the senior manager to go, let's go and have a look at this. I've got this, I'm on these, and you know, that's why it's okay, let me just check. A Google search, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, go on, crack on. Or, no, you're lying through your teeth. That does not cause that reading. You need to go home. Let me ask you another question. Since you are all here, what do you do with somebody that you discover to be high or drunk? And I say drunk, but, you know, impaired by alcohol. Let's go with that. Somebody is impaired by drugs or alcohol, and they are discovered to be so. What would be your recommended course of action? Is it send them home with a stern warning? Is it to basically fire them on the spot? Is it to recommend rehab or some sort of counselling, or, you know, some sort of investigation to find out why they decided that this is a good idea, this is a good course of action to turn up under the influence of drugs or alcohol? Love to get your thoughts on it. I know what the legal thing says, and unless you've got it actually written into your terms and conditions of employment, there's not a great deal you could do to fire somebody. So I'd like to get your point on that. Dan Cullen says France is 0-2. It just, I mean, and therein lies the thing. Now, just very quickly, I mean, I've been travelling to Sweden for 30 plus years, probably 35 years. Love the place, love the people, love the food, you know. But alcohol in Sweden is notoriously expensive. As a result, most Swedes tend to drink. If they're going to drink at all, they tend to drink at the weekend. France is a whole lot different. France has a complete drinking culture. It is a wine drinking nation. You know, if you spend any time in bits of France, you'll often see, you know, children 5, 6, 7 years old with a tiny little glass of wine topped up with lemonade or whatever it might be, because that is part of their culture. If they can have zero tolerance on alcohol in France, where wine is a way of life, why can't we? And is it why can't we, or is it why don't we? And I think it's more a case of, it's not the fact that we can't, it's the fact that we won't. Mick says, good point, Peter, but then if you're on certain medication, then you know not to drive. Yeah, there's another point. I mean, Peter actually mentions here, when I can find it. Yeah, Peter says night nurse is one of the most common ones, Michael, or Mick, and not many people know that. But it's on the label. You know, you should not operate heavy machinery while you're on night nurse. Frankly, night nurse poleaxes me. I mean, I'd be hard pushed to drive that on night nurse. If I take night nurse, which is very, very rare, I have about 20 to 25 minutes to get myself upstairs and in bed, because otherwise I'm going to be asleep exactly where I took it. But it's on the label. Do not operate heavy machinery if you are taking this stuff. those rules exist. But is that a thing that we do, which seems to be the way in the world, not just the UK, but the way in the world these days? We have put a warning on it, and therefore we're covered. You know, packets of peanuts with may contain nuts. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Packet of peanuts has got nuts in it. But it means that the person that is selling those peanuts can't be sued by somebody saying, you didn't warn me that these nuts had nuts in them. And I look at me, I'm all ill. Rather than addressing the problem, we address the symptoms. That, unfortunately, I think is where the UK is at the moment. Dan says, also, guys, that's not in positive state of mind. Can be dangerous. Wife left him or had a massive row with the foreman. Yeah, all of those things are contributory. And listen, have I in my time reached for a bottle when I've been having a bad day? Wife's giving me grief? Of course I have. A long while ago, but yeah, of course I have. So I do think you do need to take that step back. It's not just a case of hard and fast. To go back to my black and white analogy, I don't think it's hard and fast. We can smell booze on you, you're fired. I think you do need to look into the cause. Why is somebody using alcohol as a crutch, particularly during work hours, particularly in a dangerous environment like construction or demolition? But you do need to think it through. And here's an interesting point. I've got to be honest. I had never thought of this. Dan Cullen comes back with this. I wouldn't send them home because they'd be a danger to all road users. And there was a job where an operator landed pissed and they had the police take him for drink driving too. Yeah, see, my feeling is, you pal, you need to go home because you're clearly impaired. And he jumps behind the wheel of a car. Well said, Dan Cullen. Hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, Mick says, these protocols do exist. Young drivers can get a couple of bob off their insurance if they have a speed monitor fitted. Yeah, and you can get a bit of money off if you've got a dash cam fitted as well, to prove that if you do find yourself in an accident or an incident, that you are the innocent party. So you can get a discount on your insurance with that. Why could we not extend that to breathalyzers? 19% of people in the UK are under the influence of drink or drugs whilst driving on British roads, according to break.org. How worrying is that? Pretty much 1 in 5. 1 in 5 people that are out there on the roads. And you people, by and large, I would imagine at some point today, you're likely to be on the roads. No, 1 in 5 have so little regard for their well-being or your well-being that they are doing it under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Doesn't that give you a warm and fuzzy feeling about humanity, eh? Oh, Mick says it's been a common knowledge that a night nurse was bad. I know a bloke that was addicted to it. One of the reasons they diluted the stuff down. Doesn't make it taste any better, though, does it? That's the other reason I don't take night nurse unless I really have to. Tastes bloody horrible. Did that one. A good bit on the HSC site about stress today. I'll go and have a look at that, Mick. Maybe we'll regroup all that tomorrow. What's interesting to note is that many countries in Eastern Europe have much stricter drink drive limits, including Poland, Czechia, Romania, and all countries in the Balkan states, than the likes of France, Spain, Italy, and Germany, which all have a customary 0.05% limit. But again, when I think of Poland and Czechia particularly, they do have a very sort of beer culture, don't they? Polish beer, Czech beer, that they are very much into the beer culture. So maybe they do need to have that. Dan Cullen says, I'm glad I let the train take the strain at 4 a.m. Yes. By the way, Dan, thank you very much for sending the WhatsApp group a message to say that you were up and about in the ghost towns of East London at 4 o'clock this morning. It hardly woke me up at all after I went to bed at about 12:30 last night. So thanks for that. Mick says, problem with all this is cost of the employer. Personally, I think the insurance people should make it mandatory. I wouldn't argue. I think somebody needs to make it mandatory. And here's the other point, okay? And Dan has just highlighted this. You are forbidden. The law forbids you to drive a car or a motorcycle on a British highway if you are under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Step onto a construction site and it's frowned upon, but the rules and regulations as they stand today do not specifically forbid it. We have rules and regulations saying, you can't wear rigger boots because you might twist your ankle. You must have gloves on lest you scratch your hands. You have to have a hard hat, and the hard hat has to be to a certain specification and has to be under a certain age because they do deteriorate with age. And you have to wear orange PPE on this side, yellow on this side. You have to have your sleeves rolled down to protect you. All of these rules and regulations. Alcohol, well, don't do that. Don't drink and don't do drugs. How do you know? And when you think about the comparison with PPE, even the laziest site supervisor in the world can look out the window of his cabin and see there's a bloke over there without a hard hat on. Or there's a bloke over there wearing orange when everybody else is wearing yellow, or vice versa. There's a guy over there wearing rigger boots. You can see that at a glance. You can't with drugs and alcohol. And I just as another point on this, and it's a bit of a pet gripe of mine, this. Would we have such a problem with drugs and alcohol in the industry if we went back to, you remember how project managers and site supervisors used to work? They weren't tucked away in a nice warm office filling out paperwork and sending email reports back to head office. They were actually out in the thick of it, telling people what to do, telling people what not to do, making sure things were on schedule, making sure that machines were being well looked after, and so on down the line, making sure that everybody was doing what they were supposed to be doing. If you were a site supervisor and you were out and about spending time with the guys, you pop up on the tracks, give them the thumbs up. I'm not just saying leap up there, but give them the thumbs up. And you get up to have a word with one of the operators, and he opens his window, and you get the heady whiff of whiskey. You'd know that. You don't get the heady whiff of whiskey if you're sat in a nice warm office, never setting foot outside. Would we have the same situation that we have today if we went back to the old school way of doing things, whereby site supervisors actually supervised? Question of the day. Another question of the day. Majority of European countries have a drink drive limit of 0.05%, which means drivers are allowed 0.05 grams of alcohol per 100 millilitres of blood. That's typically the equivalent of around one beer or one small glass of wine. See, even the language, and I'm sure Peter has got that from Google or ChatGPT or something like that. Typically, the equivalent of around one beer or one small glass of wine. So typically, well, what's typical? Around one beer. Is it one beer? Is it half of a beer? Is it a pint or is it half a pint? Is it a pint and a half? What is a small glass of wine? Is it that much or is it that much? Is it down to the glass? Is it down to the bottle? Is it down? It's a non. And when you think about one beer, what beer? There are beers on the market that are what? 2% alcohol? You probably have two of them, maybe even three. What about if you're drinking something really heavy that's 6-7%? Can you have one? There's so much flex that it makes it a nonsense. Even those that are trying to abide by the rules are so complex and so variable and so open to perception and interpretation that the rules don't even, there's not a do this, don't do that. There's not. It's a flimsy bloody thing. Mick says, didn't see you when I was walking the hound at 4:30. What is it with you people at 4:30 in the morning? You do realise you don't have to be up that time of the day. Gary Muirhead, morning Gary. And Gary, I returned home to find, I've returned home, I've had a gift of some drinks from Gary. but not alcoholic drinks. No. I have drinks, fizzy drinks, soft drinks from the Paisley Drinks Company. And I've got 5 cans of various. I've got strawberry lemonade and ginger beer, but there is one. Get this. Now, I am a man of a certain age, and I remember what it was like to grow up and have a hankering for fizzy drinks. How about this? There is a drink within this package that Gary sent me. Rhubarb cream soda. Doesn't that sound like the greatest invention you ever heard? I mean, I love rhubarb. I love cream soda, but imagine the two together. I'm planning to drink one a day because of my diabetes. I can't be drinking these willy-nilly. So I'm planning to drink one a day. And I've already figured out that I'm going to start with a ginger beer. Not because I don't like ginger beer, but I've not had a ginger beer since I was about 10. Can't even remember what it tastes like. I'm going to go through the lemonades and the colas. And my final drink from the Paisley Drinks Company, if you're watching, thank you. And thank you to Gary. I'm saving the best till last. Rhubarb ice cream soda. Peter says, Mark, it isn't illegal to be under the influence of drink or drugs. You can't be impaired by drink or drugs. So 1 or 2 beers of glasses or wine are legal, depending on body mass, and some people can disperse alcohol more quickly than others. See, it's another variable. I remember going out on the well, I would say I was on the lash. The guy that was with me, not so much. I went out with a Japanese guy, tiny little fella. I worked for Komatsu back in the day, and I mean, this is back in my drinking days. I probably had, I don't know, 8-9 pints. And yeah, listen, I wasn't going to be driving anytime soon. I certainly shouldn't have been allowed anywhere near a machine. And I woke up the following day with a hangover. But my little Japanese friend, pint and a half, literally fell over. So yeah, body mass does have a big impact. But surely it'll be a whole lot easier to understand is do not drink. Do not do drugs when you're going to drive a machine or you're going to drive a car. Do not. Just do not. There you are. There's no talk about body mass or, I mean, even things like this. 0.05%, 0.05 grams of alcohol. What does that look like? What does 0.05 grams of alcohol look like? That much? That much? I mean, I don't even work in grams. I have no idea what any of that means. So how, and particularly somebody that's out of an evening and, you're out with your mates. Excuse me, barman, how many grams of alcohol per 100 millilitres is that? They wouldn't know. British Medical Association, BMA, said it would lobby the next government to reduce the limit by nearly half for most people to 50 milligrams of alcohol per 100 ml of blood or 0.05% and to 20 milligrams for new and commercial drivers. Alcohol and drug-related deaths were at a record high in 2021 and 2022, the BMA said in a statement on Monday. See, I had no idea that the BMA had said that, but it makes perfectly. My timing is perfect, impeccable even. Dan Cullen says he's in Waterloo. Peter McKenna says, rhubarb cream soda. Immense drools. Not had it since I lost my HGV licence. Because you were travelling to Scotland, I can only assume. Not because it was outlawed when you lost your licence. Trouble is, with the laws in this country, they are not defined. Too many points of law and how they are implemented. And you know full well that when there is leeway, people will exploit it. Look at the spate of shoplifting we've had in this country, which, cut a long story short, is an absolute bloody disgrace. And let me state for the record, if there is, a young mum who has nicked a tin of beans to feed her child, I'm not condoning it, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. If, however, you are one of these people that walks into the Apple store and fills your pockets full of iPhones, or if you go to your local Sainsbury's or Asda and basically fill a trolley up with whiskey, knowing full well that the security do not have the power to stop you, That's where we have an issue. It's, well, you're not supposed to steal whiskey. Are you going to stop me? Well, no. I'll steal it then. And that's exactly what we have with this. You're not supposed to drink alcohol while you're driving an excavator. What are you doing to stop me? Well, I'm asking you not to, but I'm not doing anything about it. Fine. I remember a woman on a site, 6'6", slim build, and she outdrank a man of nearly 20 stone in a pub one night. Well, fair play to her. 6'6" woman. That's a big lady. Peter McKenna says, I have a pint of Guinness when I go out for a meal. I feel guilty driving home. How the hell does someone get in a car or truck that are over the drive limit? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, and listen, I don't like to dwell on it, but me and alcohol have not always got on well. I mean, we're not even on speaking terms these days. But even at the height of my drinking, and blackouts were not an unusual occurrence. At no point, even when I was completely off my face, at no point did I think, do you know what? I'm going to drive home. At no point. Now, on the flip side of that, did I ever go to work still under the influence of alcohol? Yeah. Woke up some mornings still pissed from the night before. Used to go out during the mornings, to various events, have a drink, and then go back to the office. But I was driving a typewriter. Wasn't driving an excavator or a car or a truck. Mick says, got to the stage now where I'm out of the game after 6 pints of the black stuff. 6 pints of the black stuff is that's pretty good going, though, I would say. Always weirded me out that the fact that you have different capacities for different alcohols. I mean, when I finally accepted the fact that I needed to quit before it killed me, Jack Daniels was my drink of choice. Jack Daniels and ice, that was it. And I could drink a lot of that. And yet Guinness, 4 pints of Guinness, wouldn't have even remembered my own name. I don't know what that is. Peter says, used to go to Scotland on a regular basis. Miss so much of their fare. I'm drooling thinking about the delicacies that I've not had for years. Yeah, I think, I think that's really, really, I think we overlook that. I mean, I think, I'm going to come back to this in just a second. I don't think you realise just how good Scottish food is. And I realise everybody defaults to all deep-fried Mars bars. Don't knock it till you've tried it. But Scotland, you think about all the game that they have up there. The black pudding, the white pudding, the mealy pudding, the square sausages, all of the things. Fantastic stuff, absolutely. And incidentally, I met up with a friend of mine, Alessia from MB Crusher, my second favourite Italian person in the entire world. My first favourite being Paolo Di Canio, who played for West Ham, but that's a whole other story. But I met up with her, and she'd spent a good few years living in the UK, and she has this really, really strange accent that is halfway between Italian and Cockney. But she's a lovely lady, and and I was, as I always do whenever I'm speaking with Italian, oh, you guys are so lucky, the food that you've got. And she actually said, and she said this with a straight face, yeah, it's good, but I'd swap it all for bangers and mash. Well, Alessia, I know you're not watching this, but you're a mad woman. Give me Italian food any day of the week. Gary says, my son works for M&S. The store doesn't have security guards. They're not allowed to confront them. Just let them leave with the goods. Yeah. I'm sure I told you this story. There's one of these wild bean cafes. There's a petrol station, a BP, I think it is, and it's got the M&S bit on it. And I was in there one afternoon, and there was a guy in there basically with a black bin bag, and he was just basically filling it with lasagnas and pizzas and everything else. And one of the guys behind the counter shouted, "Shoplifter!" And I turned around. I didn't know what. Turned around, and there's this guy just filling his bag up. And I said to him, "Mate, they're going to nick you." And he said, "Well, they're not, and I'm hungry. I'm hungry, and I can't afford food." And they basically, the guys working in the Wild Bean Cafe basically watched him fill a bag, and walk out. I'm sure they called the police, but, he would have been long gone before the police arrived. Just helped himself. Dan Cullen says, JD and Guinness, my 2 drinks. I'm kind of with that. The only thing I would say is couldn't do them together. Mick says, never touch the top shelf, unless it's a drop of Irish. A lot of game on the street corners in Glasgow. That's a whole other story. Peter McKenna says, I'm not innocent, don't get me wrong, but I now dread to think what could have happened over the years. We used to regularly go in pubs on layovers in the truck, sometimes getting out at closing time, then setting off down the road at 4 a.m. The past 15 years, I've kicked myself daily. Maybe I'm a hypocrite, but I'm now dead against drink driving as a whole. Listen, we all mature, don't we? And there are things that I did in my younger years that I'm not particularly proud of. Many of them alcohol related, actually. But yeah, my wife's grandmother was knocked up in the air by a drunk driver who, as it turned out, was actually a police inspector off duty, been out on the piss and basically ran through a zebra crossing and knocked her up in the air. And I think that she wasn't my grandmother, but seeing the impact up close, I think you do get a new perspective on the likely impact or the possible impact of doing that kind of thing. Mick says, Gary was going to say, mate of mine works for Asda. He reckons they are feeding half the Isle of Dogs through shoplifters. Yeah. And yet we've got this strange situation. I'm sure this isn't just where I live. I mean, bearing in mind I'm in leafy Surrey, where crime is just a figment of everyone's imagination. But I have a local branch of Boots, and there are 3 and sometimes 4 security guards, all with their walkie-talkies, all with their stab-proof vests on there, manning Boots. And I must admit, naively, I thought that they were there to protect the very expensive designer perfumes. No. They are there to protect things like nappies and baby milk formula, which apparently are quite desirable. Yeah. And yeah, if anybody does actually shoplift in there, they don't stop them because they're not permitted to do so. I wonder where that changed. I'm sure I've mentioned this before. There was a guy I used to come into, between going from school to college, I used to work in a newsagent, basically just to give myself some pocket change or whatever, mainly to go down the pub, which is ironic, but I worked in a newsagent. There was a guy who used to come in, big biker, and he was a right arrogant git. And, he'd regularly sort of go and help himself to a Mars bar, stand there and eat it in front of you, hand you the wrapper and say, I'll pay for that next time I'm in. So, I mean, it wasn't my shop, it was somebody else's. And I'd been told, you don't confront shoplifters and everything else. But under the counter, there was a metal tube. And this guy came in there one afternoon and basically helped himself to, I'll have a Mars bar and a Twix, I'll have all the motorcycle magazines, put them all on the counter and went, I'll pay next time. And I went, no, you're going to pay now. No, it'll be all right, the boss knows me. No, the boss don't know you. And he said, what are you going to do? And I actually felt my hand close around that tube. And I thought, I'll tell you exactly what I'm going to do. You're going to get this at the side of your bloody head, pal. And I don't know whether I'm not a fighter. I'm not a big guy or anything like that. But I think he kind of sensed that I wasn't taking this lying down. And he just literally picked up the whole lot, threw it at me and walked out. Came back a few days later, did exactly the same thing. But yeah, things seem to have changed. Peter says, people and attitudes change. I've never been holier than thou, but I will admit my failings. Yeah, listen, that's why I've had me mental health wobbles. I had a very troubled relationship with alcohol. I'm open about it. Mick says, Peter, I never admitted anything, but the bloody judges never believed me. Peter McKenna says, lol, dull thing is, when I was parked up, I only had maybe 1 or 2 beers, but parked up with the lads, I felt pressured to be one of the gang. How stupid was I? Do you know that was the hardest part of? There were 2. Giving up alcohol, and I did literally go cold turkey because the doctor scared the bejesus out of me. That's the whole story. But I went cold turkey, just completely killed alcohol completely. Just that's it. That was my last drink, and it proved to be. two things that I find hard or found hard. First was whenever you had a barbecue, because I used to barbecue with a spatula in one hand and a beer in the other. That felt weirdly unnatural. But your mates, go on, have one, you'll be fine. No, I won't be fine if I have one. I'll be in a world of trouble if I have one. What do you mean you only want a Diet Coke? I only want a Diet Coke. And working in the industry that I was in, the number of times you'd go to an event, and I remember one in particular, going to a topping out ceremony in Canary Wharf back in the day of Docklands, the Docklands construction. And I arrived and they said, Mark, welcome. Come on in. We're going to be cutting the ribbon in just a moment. Would you like a drink? And I said, yeah. And they walked away. And the guy came back and he gave me a champagne glass and a bottle of champagne. And I went, don't suppose you've got it is 8 o'clock in the morning. Don't suppose you've got like an orange juice or something like that? Oh, no. No. Well, I would send somebody out, but, no, we haven't got, they had no soft drink, not even a glass of water. So there I stood, 1988, 1989 me. Fine. We'll take that one down. I think I took that one down and another one after it, because my job encouraged me to do it. Doesn't make it right, obviously. I know I was taking the train, just so you know. Peter, there was a truck stop on the M74 Crawford. Used to put on a stripper, and the place was packed with randy truck drivers, all getting tanked up. Was there? Is it still there? How do I find it? Bloody hell, this show is getting like Andy's Man Club every week. Do you know, it's a strange thing. I bumped into a guy in Sweden. I'll tell you the whole story. This guy bounded up to me and he went, and this is his words. Honestly, this is not me. Guy bounded up and he went, "Are you the famous Mark Anthony?" And I said, "No." And he grabbed my name badge from around my neck and went, "Yes, you are. We have a mutual friend." And I said, "We do?" And he said, "Yeah." Turns out this guy was the salesman, the Volvo salesman for the Benelux countries, or the sales manager. So he's mates with Al Grierson, formerly of this parish. Morning, Al, if you do get to watch this. So we were chatting, but he had a colleague with him. And he said, "Oh, yes, Mark does this show." And, there's videos and stuff. He said, but afterwards, they all talk about issues within the industry. And all of these guys, they all got something to contribute. And the guy said, "What's it called?" And I told him, "Breakfast Show, 10 o'clock every morning." And he said, "I've never heard of that. How else do you do that? Where else do people talk about this stuff?" Here. That's where you get to talk about this stuff. Peter McKenna says, "When I was in my teens, I stopped drinking, was 20 to 30 pints a night. Fuck me. I lost so many so-called friends when I stopped and went on to drinking Coke on a night out. By the last laugh, I could remember all the silly antics the day after." That's a bit of a double-edged sword, that, to my mind, Peter. I like the fact that I can watch my mates get drunk and do silly things, but I am the perennial I am the designated driver all the time. Lucky to get a stale rolling tea now at the meetings at Canary Wharf. Yeah, I bet. It's only acceptable to have a pint at 5 a.m. when you're at the airport. Yeah, what is that? And I do remember this. I mean, let me think. It was the World Cup 1998, I think it was. England were playing, it was hosted in France. England were playing, and we were playing Tunisia in the opening round. And a friend of mine got a couple of tickets. So me and my best mate decided, yeah, we'll pop down to Marseille and Nice for a long weekend and go on and we were at Stansted Airport, 5 o'clock in the morning. Pint, Guinness, yeah, go on. And I do remember thinking, why? 5 o'clock in the morning, I'd quite like a cup of tea, really. Maybe a bacon sandwich. Why am I drinking? What the hell? I'll have another one. What's that about? Gary, there were lots up and down the country. There used to be a stripper, full sex at the place, bloody hell, Mark, where they regularly held the darts down. Really? That would be Essex way, I would imagine. Yeah, Essex is a law unto itself, isn't it? Dan Cullen, lost majority of my mates too, as they didn't like that I stopped drinking. Yeah. Yeah, it's a strange thing, that, isn't it? Like that's the only thing you've got in common. And in some cases, that is all you've got in common. You know, particularly when you start to see, you know, when it's 2 o'clock in the morning and they are all off their faces and you see how they're behaving. And I mean, I have that pleasure now. I can sort of stand back and think, oh, well, A, I'm glad that's not me. And B, why are we friends again? If that is your way of behaving and the way of talking and the way of treating others, women included, yeah, kind of glad I'm out of that. I think that'll probably do us, people, won't it? I don't know what we're going to talk about tomorrow. I'm going to try and mix in a little upbeat with a little bit downbeat. But yeah, that one, as I say, just literally got in the taxi, saw the guy with the breathalyzer and thought, well, there's a talking point. And then to have it reinforced the following day with Volvo. And just here's another point. And I'm not pointing accusing fingers. I promise you I'm not doing that. But when myself and Paul Argent, Peter Haddock and Nick Drew and all these people, when we go to these press events, a lot of them are, you arrive the night before and you have a nice meal and it's all very convivial and we all have a chat with the directors of whoever's hosting you and you have a glass of wine and maybe you have another glass of wine, maybe you pop to the bar afterwards. You think, I'm not going to name names, excuse me, you think about all of the manufacturers that I've visited over the 4.5 years that this show has been going. Only one of them has required me and my colleagues to do alcohol testing before they jump on a machine. And it is kind of accepted in journalistic circles that you are wined and dined. Listen, I'm not going to complain about it because I quite enjoy it, but you know that is the way we're treated. You're the press. Have a good hearty meal and have a glass of this and a glass of that. And the following day we all get up and there's the keys to the machine. Go knock yourself out. Is that a good thing? Peter McKenna says, bye all, have a good day, and then comes back and says, Lakeside at Thurrock was where the Stroopers were. I've remembered. Lakeside. Yeah. Dan Cullen says, have a great day, guys, and happy hump day. I can't believe it's happy hump day, given this is my first show of the week. But yeah, things are going to be a bit erratic over the next couple of days, the next week or so, because I've got other bits and pieces coming up. I'm doing I can't tell you what it is because I'm sworn to secrecy, but I'm doing a thing on Monday next week. I don't actually know the timing of it. Completely unrelated to work, although the guy I'm doing it with is work related, but it's unrelated to work, but it's top secret and I can't tell you what it is. I don't know what the time of that is going to be. So I may do a show on Monday. I may not. I'll keep you posted. And then on Friday of next week, I am going up to Birmingham to see the new Institute of Demolition Engineers president be crowned. Do you crown a president? You probably don't. But Adrian McLean of Armac gets to be the president of the IDE. I'm going up there on Friday, so there won't be a show on Friday either way. Gents, have a good day and stay safe. Not about tomorrow. I'm at Westminster for the opening of the Garden of Remembrance. Again, stay safe. Don't need to lose any one of you to drink or drugs or anything else. So would you please look after yourselves? I'll see you all tomorrow for more of whatever the hell this has been. Till then, everybody, have a great day. All the best.